Let's give a huge Hall-H welcome to Senior Director of Programming for Comic-Con International, Mr. Eddie Ibrahim.
Thank you very much. Welcome to Saturday, everybody. Always a big day here at Hall-H. Thank you so much for being a part of it. You guys ready for a full day? Hopefully you guys are super excited. I know we have a great lineup. I'm pretty excited for this next panel, or actually our starting panel. I'm a big fan of the show. How many of you guys are fans of Superman and Lois? Let's hear it. Come on. All right, just a few housekeeping things. Please don't record footage. And we want to make sure the studios continue to bring in, so let's not record it. And let's get right into it. Let's get Saturday started. So with that, it is my pleasure to bring out the moderator for this panel, Mr. Damian Holbrook.
This has been a spectacular run. We've got so much to talk about. Todd, when this all started, when you first talked to Greg Berlanti, you asked him, how do you do Superman differently? What was his answer?
Well, what the show became, we make it about family.
And at a time that there was a small chance that if the fans really liked me and Tyler together, that it was possible that they would give us our own show. So it's like, I really hope this works, but I don't know about this guy. And it worked out well.
Greg, when did you start? Because you've been with the show since the pilot. Yeah. When did you start to see that chemistry, that personal connection between Bitsy and Tyler that you guys knew you'd start writing to?
I mean, I think from the pilot, the pilot is so strong. When that came in, all doubts were erased. And then for us, it was a little bit trying to make them, you say Friday Night Lights, trying to make them the couple that's the best couple on television, And every time we wrote something to that, they delivered, So it was like, oh, okay, we can add this to this and this to this, and it just kept improving. And I honestly believe to this day they're the best couple on television right now.
Absolutely.
Now.
And, honestly, I'm 150 years old. I've seen a lot of Lois and Superman pairings, and first of all, you look at Tyler Hoechlin and you're like, oh yes, he was genetically modified to play Superman. Like, that kid probably had a cake with his diapers. But watching you two, and the way Lois was established in that pilot of getting that essence of who Lois Lane has always been, when we started to watch it, I was like, oh, and the cool thing is, again, for different ages, this is a Lois and Superman that we will always hold on to. This is like a generation Lois and Clark, and it is, it's been beautiful to watch because you've not only given them high drama stuff to do and great action stuff, but you've also given us a lot of levity, a lot of romance. When did that start to realize, sort of to gel and be like, oh, these can be parents who also are very in love with each other?
I think that barn scene, maybe episode 4 of the first season, it was really sweet and it was kind of sexy, and we were like, we're going to keep doing that. More of that, please.
And then there was that great episode, I think it was Greg's 11, the whole flashback episode where they kind of meet and start falling in love. That was really fun.
Yeah, there's that scene at the Daily Planet where you hit on him for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, and then you did this little thing. I was like, oh, that's great.
So for Tyler and Bitsy, what did you guys think after the Elseworld stuff? And they said to you, hey, if this show goes, they're going to be dealing with real life problems. Were you like, that's a tough sell?
That was what sold us on it. We were sold on the sort of Friday Night Lights, which I've never heard and I love. The Friday Night Lights was a superhero element, but what we kept Todd was it's going to be very grounded, and it's really a show primarily about family dynamics with, you know, Superman and Lois Lane, of course, being these iconic characters, but that it was going to be grounded and it wasn't going to feel, you know, not like highfalutin, but just grounded.
Tyler, what about you? Because this was really one of the first times you got to play like the full grown up. Because you literally just played a teen.
I literally never thought about that until you said that.
It's like you went from a teen.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, it was a bit of a jump. I mean, I do remember.
Teen to father of teen.
Yeah, seriously, overnight. No, I think for me it was more. I remember when even before Todd and I talked, like Greg and I were talking. I think it was just I was at a place in life where I wanted to do a show that focused on what I was feeling at that point was the most important thing, which was family. I'd gone through that phase of my life where, like, you know, been away from home and kind of like seeking my own stuff and figuring out who I am. And I was like, okay, now I'm coming back to that, like, family is the core and that's what's the most important thing. And so I think it just kind of organically lined up with where I was at in life. And yeah, I mean, maybe a few years early for me to have teenagers in my own life. But still, I think to tell that story and to make it about family was a really, I don't know, a fortuitous thing from just where I was personally. It felt like, yeah, this is what I want to emphasize right now. If there's a story that we're going to be telling, I'd like to be telling the importance of this. So,
The show was renewed after one episode. What was it like on set that day?
we were probably taking a COVID test. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if you watch Lee Tolan Krieger and Gavin Smothers, who's our DP, they did episode 1 and episode 2, and Lee did such a phenomenal job establishing the look of the show, these sort of muted, golden, warm colors, and shooting in wide format. I mean, it looked so cinematic. It looked like a movie, and I was so proud when I saw them, and I just honestly wasn't surprised. I think we all did a really good job. You could tell that it was different.
Right. It looked different from anything that was airing on that network at the time. The color saturated, like, it was, and also, so let's talk about that, because the visual language of the show was really important to keeping the tone right and keeping it grounded. What were the conversations with, you know, the network and the production and stuff about, we're going to make this look very different from your other superhero shows?
Yeah, it started when I first sat down with Lee. I was like, look, I think, you know, the look should be a little bit different, a little bit more Terrence Malick. You know, so it's Kansas, it's summer, even though we shot in Vancouver in the winter. Thanks. And Lee was like 1,000% in, and he, you know, he's so visually astute. He's exceptionally good at that. And so all the DPs that he interviewed, Gavin came on, and there's still to this day, or not now, but up until we wrapped, there was in the writer's office, there were all the analogs, the shows, and then so Lee is just a very passionate, convincing person. So he's like, I'm going to call Mark Fedowitz, and I'm going to ask him. And, you know, and Mark is so awesome, and huge fan, and very supportive, and was like, yeah, you guys think this is the best thing to do, let's do it.
One of the show's greatest assets was how you put this family together, and you actually told stories that you'd be deep into an episode and forget, oh, he's an alien, and he's got superpowers, because we were so wrapped up and caught up in the family dynamic. Who was the one that kind of like kept the balance of, you know, like spectacle and emotion?
I think that was all of us, the whole writing staff. I think, you know, we all just, from day one, it was very clear from the pilot and from the second episode what the show was going to be and what it needed to be. And so it was always the conversations we had. Some people may not want to hear this, but it was like the Superman, the spectacle was important. But that was also for being a show on the CW, you know, it's not, we don't have millions and millions and millions of dollars an episode to spend visual effects, so we had to really dial it in and make those moments important.
Yeah, you made it look like you had millions and millions of dollars.
That's because, and we always make sure, and I actually said this, someone on Twitter was like, at the very beginning, season 1, we're like, well, they're doing this show on an HBO Max budget. I'm like, no, we're not. Matt Gore and the VFX team is doing this, like, they just loved the show so much. They made it look like we had a massive budget, but they never did. And so kudos to them for working so hard and doing such a beautiful job of VFX.
That weren't season finales that clearly had that.
Like, some of them look better than movies.
Honestly, yeah.
And I think, just to speak to that, our whole crew had buy-in as well. You know, you get kind of one shot to do Superman. And so everybody felt honored to do it and kind of got the vision that we had for it. And so even when things got taken away from us, we had a core group of people that were kind of fighting the same fight. And I think you see that on the screen. I think that's how we got there.
Oh, so the first episode they're back with you guys. There is a sequence where I'm like, I'm sorry, did I pay $16.50 to see this in IMAX? It is insane. And I'm like, how is this on like network television? Once it was revealed, once you got to reveal that the show actually wasn't set in the universe of the Arrowverse, it wasn't that time. How much did that free you up to not have like be beholden to what had come before?
I mean, a lot, actually. It was, you know, like, we talked about this a little bit before in some interviews, but, you know, the intention, like, we were going to do crossovers, and COVID just threw a wrench in everything. And the further along we got, the less organic it was going to be. It was going to feel weirder to have, you know, Grant show up and not have Grant show up and not talk about any of these characters, Supergirl, Flash. And so, I think we didn't really change that much, but we just leaned into, okay, everybody knows now the audience, you know, and hopefully they accept it in the way that we had to, right? And then we just
Because you would have had to kind of like Superman and Lois, the Flash, or Supergirl, like they'd have to show up and be like, why are all the lights muted? Why are there just like empty warehouses for us to fight in? Tyler, I know you have been asked this a million times, but I need, because you know, we never got panels with you for this. Can you walk us through the process of being fitted for a Superman suit?
It's his favorite.
Which one? Well, actually, I want to say one thing, because it's kind of funny you say that. So, I realized the other day, the only time I've been here for Superman was 8 years ago, I think, before I'd even shot anything. So, this is like a real bookend for me, which is kind of weird, because I did it before I did anything, and now after we've done everything. So, kind of crazy. Those are the two occasions we've been here for that. But for the suit, it's very detailed. You know, if you've ever been measured for like a real suit, you know, they do like the down the arm and the thing. There's like 20 other measurements I didn't know about, which is like this segment, then this segment, then that segment. Like it's so precise. But I mean, our costume department, Kat, they did such a great job. You know, each time we did something new and different with the suit, they were phenomenal. And so it was very cool. I know that the response to, you know, every time we would put one out, I think was usually very, very positive. It's never always going to be entirely positive. I think we know that with this genre. So we take more than 50% positive as a very big win. So
There is a very, very cool detail on the suit for season 4 that I hope people don't miss. Keep an eye out for a very cool detail.
How many pieces is this?
depends. The first one was 1. And then I think the first 2 were one piece, and then eventually we tried. There's a lot of practical fighting and stunts that we do in the suit, and so you know over time, you know having a zipper in the back and like a one-piece thing, any kind of rotation and things like that started to get a little bit constricted. So we tried to evolve it over time to make it a little bit more functional for the fight sequences and things like that. So it's evolved over the season.
I just want to say one thing about so this guy, like we're hanging from wires. He's in like undersuits that are very restrictive, and he's being hung, and he never complains once ever. He talks about us about, hey, maybe we can loosen it up a little bit here because it's hurting my shoulders. And on top of that, he's working 12-hour days, and then he goes and works out and gets super ripped. And so, like, I just wanted to say, like, this guy was amazing the whole time, and we super appreciate it.
we once talked about how one of Lois's greatest strengths is that she is okay with being vulnerable. She is not completely, like, she is okay with being open. And we saw that over and over again. Both she and Clark, both very early on, accepted that they weren't killing it as parents. You guys, like, you had some problems. But how do you think the past 3 seasons have changed her?
Before I answer that question, I do want to just say thank you to everyone who's in the audience. I saw the lines. It's hot. This is my 8th Comic-Con. I love genre fans. You're so passionate. You're so astute and loyal, and I appreciate you being. As far as the vulnerability, I mean, who here has seen the Brene Brown thing on how vulnerability is actually a strength? Yeah. And I kind of went into it being like, Lois isn't vulnerable. She's so determined and fierce and, just, pursuit of truth no matter what. And then the writing starts coming in, and then they wrote this episode, season 1, where Lois is talking about having had a very late-term miscarriage. I'm like, oh, okay, we're going there. Okay. And the response to both that and the cancer storyline was so, for the most part, really positive. I know there were some fans who were like, it's too vulnerable, but I think at the end of the day, like, she's human and she's going through a lot, and she has 2 hormonal teenagers who are acting out all the time, and a husband who's like, where is he now? What's he up to now? Is he alive? Is he dead? She's got a lot going on. Over the course of the season, I think once the cancer storyline, because Todd gave me inflammatory breast cancer, which is the most deadly and aggressive. He could have given me, a different kind of breast cancer, but no. Gives me the word. Once that entered into the equation, I was like, oh, I gotta go there. And so when, before I started shooting, I interviewed and spoke to, I was so grateful. There was a very famous oncologist and cancer surgeon named Dr. Christy Funk, and she put me in touch with a bunch of women. And I talked to so many of them, and I was so inspired by their stories, these survivors, and many of them who were still going through it, and a lot of them were parents. And there was this one woman, Tiffany, who lives in Washington, and she found out she's breastfeeding her 5-month-old. She had 3 kids. She squeezed her boob to see how much milk do I have today. Found a lump, and she was telling me that while she was going through chemotherapy, she would literally climb up the stairs on her stomach to get to put her kids down. And that just was so real, and that kind of was my decision. We talked a lot. I was like, I'm gonna shave my head. Can I shave my head? And they're like, no. So the solution was, you'll see at the beginning of season 3, we added a ton of extensions, and then as Lois is going through chemo, the extensions would start getting pulled out slowly, and she had the cold cap on, it was just to help the hair loss. And then just kind of straggly hair. But I made it clear, I was like, we're gonna do this. This can't be like a pretty version of cancer. Like, it needs to be raw and vulnerable and like a little ugly, like cancer is.
Bittersweet killed it. Everything that we asked, she nailed. Credit where credit's due, it was Brent's idea.
Okay, so I wanted to know, what inspired you to tell that story at that point?
It was a couple of things. Just, every family's been touched by it. My mom had breast cancer, but it was not as severe as Lois's. And it was telling real stories that matter. I felt like we worked with Bittersweet for 3 years. You don't have a better actress to play a role like that. And to not have, in a world of genre where there are magic crystals that can solve anything, to play it straight the whole time and never to give a superhero solve to it and to never drop it. You're going to see it in 4th season. We made a pledge to Bitsy, and she made the same pledge back to us that we're never going to let that story drop as long as the show is on the air. And we pay it off at the end. We pay it off the whole time we're there, and I just felt like something like that is an opportunity for a show like ours to give something worthwhile as an audience.
Because what you did was you did what Superman does, you give hope.
Yeah.
And the scene, who had the idea to have Clark learn about it while he's floating in the air at the rooftop? Because that was such a beautiful idea of this woman telling him this man who is supposed to be impervious, being told that there's one thing he can't save, and that's the woman who loves him most.
That was not. I think that was me. I don't know. Like all that stuff, you know, you have a writing team that comes in every day and pitches a lot of ideas, and so it's hard to take credit for one thing or not. If it was a group effort, 4 seasons, our staff was amazing, and you know, so it's we all take credit for that.
Tyler and Missy, can you talk about what that storyline meant for you as both actors and as friends?
It was definitely, we were very much in it together for that 3rd season. I think first season we shot during all the COVID stuff, so that was a very kind of extreme situation. Second season still felt a little restricted in those areas, and so this was like the first season we were coming into where it felt a little bit of normalcy, and then we had this storyline to go through, and it was a very heavy season. But thankfully, I'll be genuine. Bitsy and I do love each other very much, and we do get along great. So to go through it together was very special. I can't imagine doing it with anybody else. So thank you. She did such a great job in that, and so really I just got to react to what she was doing a lot. But I think we both felt similar in the sense of, you know, are fans going to respond to this? Is what they want to see? And I will say I've had a lot of really great interaction with fans post that storyline. And I think one of the coolest things that I was able to take from that is people don't want to feel alone. And so to see characters that mean a lot to them going through something that they can connect with and feel like I'm not the only one in this place or going through this situation, I think was a really special thing for us to do. And I'm very grateful that these guys, you know, have the guts to go ahead and do that storyline. So
It was really touching too, and you know, he said a lot. So I'll keep this short. But there's a scene where Lois is getting weaker and weaker, and Tyler has to shampoo and wash my hair, and that's what it looks like. I mean, that's some of the stories that I've heard. Is like that's what it ends up looking like taking your, you know, loved one to the bathroom and taking care of them and washing their hair and everything. And I just thought there were a lot of poignant moments of intimacy where you really feel like he could lose her, you know.
I feel also, especially in those scenes and the way it all resolved, or just, you know, got us to where we were at the end of season 3, is her fight and her resilience, her faith in her family, almost leveled her up to a superhero in her own right.
Well, I've always kind of approached Lois as being a superhero just without powers. You know, I've always said this a million times. I'm forever grateful to have played this role because she's such an icon and has remained such an icon for as long as he has, because she was introduced in 1938 along with Superman in Action Comics #1, and that was a period in history where women weren't like career women, and you have this woman who's a ball buster and, you know, fierce and determined and on many levels more powerful and smarter than a lot of the guys she was working with, and so she was such a good role model for women and men.
And now, Mom, let's talk about the kids. When you were building the rest of the family, what was that like? How many submissions did you get? What were you looking for? Because these kids have to be a reflection of Clark and Lois.
Yeah, the search was a lot of fun actually, because there were so many talented people that we came across that read for us, and they all brought something unique to it. But you know, and then when we did some tests with Jordan Elsass and
We did chemistry reads. Ty and I did chemistry reads with the actors for Jordan, and then I flew in for that, and then I flew back down to do chemistry read with Jordan. You couldn't make it. For the Jonathan role. Jordan Elsass was great. Alex was great. That was fun.
Yeah, I think like the characteristics we were looking for was somebody as feisty, or somebody that represented Lois without powers, and somebody that represented, you know, it's kind of like you're flipping it between one some powers, but yeah.
And then Michael came in with the, you know,
Michael Bishop.
right, and he came in perfectly. A different energy, but also still fits within, like, you feel like, oh yeah, he would have been in this family too.
Yeah, and kudos to him, because he had such a, it's such a unique situation to walk into, and I think Tyler, you had a nice conversation with them. Like we all talk to him different ways, but you know, you just had to do his thing.
And also kudos to David Rappaport, our cast editor. He's cast so many of all of your favorite shows. But also, apparently, Michael Bishop had come close in the first go-round. Yeah, so he was already sort of in the mix. And then I know he literally, we came in, we did chemistry reads. I think there were 3 finalists. And he had flown in from Australia. And it was pretty clear that it was going to be Michael. But he had a return ticket to Australia, and we started filming. I'm not even without exaggerating, something like 4 or 5 days later, and they just said, "Okay, so you're staying. You can't leave. You have wardrobe fittings. You're gonna start shooting in like 4 or 5 days. You got the port. You're staying." And like, what? Yeah, like yay, but also what? Yeah.
I hope he packed heavily.
He did not.
How many people on the show or crew have asked or gotten to fly? Like have people stepped in and been like, "Oh,
It's such a liability.
I think we actually, no, didn't we fly Bruno? I think we did. I think we flew one cast member on the last season, or just a crew member on the last season.
That's it?
I think we did.
There's not
I don't know if there's
5 days?
photographic evidence of this. I just know that it was a green screen day, and I walked on the set to get pinned in. And I just remember everybody cheering on the way in. I'm like, that's unusual. They don't like me that much. And so I turned the corner, everybody's cheering, yeah, Bruno. And he looked like he had just pulled a session on the wires. Yeah.
Honestly, I would, if I was on that set, I would every day be like, "Yeah, that's fine. That's fine."
I was really debating as like a rap prank on Bitsy, getting these guys to write a scene into an episode that just went to Bitsy that showed Lois flying.
I wouldn't have believed it.
And I was gonna make it like a dream sequence, and I really wanted to see if we could just get her on the wires, and just have everybody leave. And just, yes.
I think they realized what a liability it would be for Warner Brothers on the wires on day 2 of filming the pilot.
That's awesome.
When I walked down the Kent farmhouse and immediately tripped and fell into a muddy puddle. And then they're like, "Okay, stay on the wires."
She also almost fell off this chair 10 minutes ago, and if none of you saw it, I'm gonna call it out right now.
Did you guys ever get to fly? I feel like you guys should have to, so you understand what you're putting the action.
We did not.
You know,
Yeah, that's a
we've
good
all
idea.
heard the horror stories.
No, but I distinctly remember when we were shooting the pilots, okay, Rob Hader, stunt master, he was like, "Hey, okay, so we're gonna do all the stuff the first 3 days." And I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds like a good idea." And then Louis Polito, producer, was like, "That's a bad idea. You're gonna, Tyler's gonna hate being home for the series." Yeah, and we never, as I said, never played.
Well, let's talk about season 4, because it is still a rarity that shows get to come in for a landing on their own terms. So you were given the runway. How did you approach, what you want to do with this final story?
With terror at first, because we had 10 episodes to kind of wrap the thing up. But Todd and I met 2 weeks before we got the writers back together, and we had an idea for the end of the show, and we knew what the beginning of the season was going to be, and we just really boogied on it, and we're kind of surprised by how much story was coming loose pretty fast. All of a sudden a lot of the restrictor plates were off because we didn't have to worry about carrying the stuff for future seasons. We could do something and live with it because there would only be 4 episodes left. And so we felt all of a sudden we were like, "Oh wow, that's a big epic moment. That's iconic," And every episode had something that we got really excited about. And by the end of it, we got to episode 10 and we're really happy with the landing.
Yeah, and it's obviously, if we had our druthers, we would have gone for 9, 10, 11, whatever. But in a lot of ways, knowing that this was the last season, it was a blessing, because we're one of the only Superman live-action properties that knew that they were going to end. Everybody else just got canceled or it ended for whatever reason. So in that way, it really opened up, story-wise, a lot of options.
I know that everyone's bummed that we only went 4 seasons, but I do want to just say, reiterate, we are grateful that we were given a chance to wrap up this series. And also, I know, I'm online, I've seen a lot of I trust James Gunn and Peter Safran. I know them they're great guys, and I trust that whatever vision they're enacting right now for the DC universe going forward is going to be awesome.
All right. Oh, did you guys ever hear from anyone who has played these characters before? Did you ever get words of wisdom from somebody who's been one of these characters?
We both avoided watching any other iteration. I'd only seen one of the Donner films with Margot Kidder, and then as soon as I got the role, I'm like, that's it. I don't want to be influenced by anyone else. Yeah.
No, I'd run into Tom Welling and Brandon at other Comic Cons and things like that, but never really exchanged any kind of words of wisdom or the way you played it or things like that. I think for me it was always important to commit to the idea of who I thought he was without any outside influence, and so I kind of left it to Todd and to Brandon and some other people to if there was ever something that they wanted to communicate, we have those conversations, but otherwise I was just going to kind of continue forward with the way that I saw it from day one.
And also, we haven't seen live action as parents and parents to teenagers, so the story in and of itself was totally different. So, I don't think it would have even made sense to be like, oh, try it this way or this is,
Yeah. All right. Well, it definitely worked out. Some things too. Over the course of the seasons, you guys have gotten mixed up with some deep cuts like Henry Irons and John Henry and Bruno Mannheim, Tal Rowe, who knew we were going to care so much about that guy. But now you've also had some marquee pulls, you had Bizarro, and now we've got a lot of Lex Luthor coming to town, correct? You're starting the season with the death of Superman.
Yeah.
How does this go?
Started, right? So there's so much mythology, and we just wanted to put our own stamp on it. So whatever the runs were that we were influenced by, we just sort of threw it into the Superman Lois blender and tried to create our own version. So this season we did the exact same thing. I mean, it's we have the benefit of having 3 seasons of a lot of hours of television. This couple, the kids, everybody else in Smallville. So emotionally, we could lean into this story in a way that maybe in a feature, and I think so. That's what we relied on, and I think it's really powerful and moving, and I think the fans are gonna love it.
Oh yeah, there's a scene at the end of the first episode back that they showed a bit of it in the trailer, but there's a cutaway to some other witnesses of something, and you feel the loss of mankind's loss. It's really beautiful. The effects are insane. Cudlitz as Lex Luthor. Yes, Cudlitz, Michael Cudlitz. You're Superman and Lois saying Lex Luthor. He's not he's not in a high tower. He's not, he's he's bald, and he's not power bald. How would you describe his range?
I mean, his range is justified in a lot of ways. That's what we found was interesting. It was an incident that happened where he was convicted for something he didn't do, although he had done all these other things. So we felt like that was a story engine that could go forever. Like a villain that's got a real beef is the best type of villain. And Todd and I, when we first talked about him, it was like a Cormac McCarthy character. We wanted that kind of the person that walks in the room and everybody's afraid of the moment that he walks into the room. And then when Michael Cudlitz signed up, we got that guy, and we're just like, we're going to ride this all the way to the end. And I think the twists and turns of this season, and seeing, who he's paired up with and seeing what his plans are, it's really compelling television moving forward.
I need to also, probably we should address, there's been a lot of reports, there were a couple months ago, it's like all these cast members were exiting, cast by all this stuff, and that's not the case at all.
No.
All of those characters still exist and are still getting service stories.
Yeah, everybody that's been in the show is still in the show, and everybody has a storyline that wraps up by the end of the season.
I'll say that these guys and the rest of the writers did a phenomenal job of taking those restrictions and I think actually using them as a strength and as a benefit for the season. I think in past episodes, there have been times where those characters, maybe like everybody gets a little bit of a snack within the episode, and now I feel like when those characters show up, everybody gets a real meal. It's like a really, really great moment with those characters, and so kudos to these guys and the writers for making that work in a really positive way.
All right, we're going to go to audience questions if you guys want to line up. I have no idea what.
It's kind of like the giggles just kind of come out because it's insane. It's an insane thing to actually look at yourself in the mirror with a Superman costume on. It's not as if it's Halloween and you kind of got one that you went and picked up somewhere last minute. It's like a very detailed one, and then people start all saying like, okay, so Superman, and they start referring to you as that because they're talking about the character. Very weird to be sitting in it. But it was cool. I think it was the very first time was about 8 years ago now. And I think it's just that moment that you kind of realize like, okay, like I'm doing this and you feel the responsibility of what it means to all the fans. You start thinking about like what that's going to look like. So it was a very surreal experience, but I'm glad it wasn't, a one and done and got to do it for a couple of years. So yeah, pretty lucky.
Thanks.
At the same time, playing the hero for a couple of years now, I'd also love to play a DC villain. Like that'd be fun. Like I said, so being able to play the hero in one thing and then playing the this iconic villain in another piece, really fun. Totally different vibes from the two characters. So being able to balance in between the two of those, it's also funny. It's kind of like you kind of need black and white for contrast, and so there were times where I'd actually do the voice of that character while we were filming, and it was a nice being able to look in the mirror and see like, okay, so this is Sephiroth, which emphasized certain things about Clark and about Superman and vice versa. So it was really fun to have those two things to bounce between.
Thanks.
Great English for everyone.
Now that unfortunately the series is ending, that actually everybody enjoy it, are you willing to be maybe appearing in the future movies now that there's a new area of Superman
Hell yeah, sign me up.
as a Superwoman?